Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the Elm City tick. Mayor Toni Harp continues to make the Elm City tick. Morning and night, she's in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Good morning, Mayor Harp. Very nice to see you.
Good morning. How are you?
I've been well, and I'm going to remind folks that they have a question for the mayor. Feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. Here's what you do. You go to the New Haven Independent Facebook page, and there you'll see us talking. You post your comment right there. Thanks to Gateway Community College, Birch & Moses PC, for providing financial support for today's program. So you've been busy, Mayor Hart. You've been all around town.
Well, I've been busy, yeah.
But you did have time
to
go shopping. Our reporter caught a photo of you at Stop and Shop. However, we didn't see any bags. You didn't buy anything. Well, you go in the supermarket if you weren't buying anything.
Well, it's really to support the workers who were there. They're on strike, and they want better benefits, better health care, and better retirement benefits. And so it's really important that we do that. And that store in particular, because it was the first store that neighbors, the city, the state, all got together to mitigate against food deserts in our city. And so it's really important. Most of the people that work there live in the community, and they need, they need to have wages that move with our economy.
Well, you talked about that food desert when a reporter caught up with you and found out you weren't there to buy food. And you were talking about where else would they go? Because some people don't have cars. So you can't just go to Rite Aid, which I'm guessing is, ShopRite, which I'm guessing is a mob scene in West Haven. They can't just, to get their milk and cheese and bread, they can't just go to a suburban supermarket. I guess you told them go to Edge of the Woods.
Yep. Elm City Market. Those were the two that came to mind. If they have cars, they could go to ShopRite and to Costco, but those are pretty far away.
Our rabbi, I wasn't in town, I was out of town, bar mitzvah, but our rabbi apparently in synagogue on Saturday told people, we're all stocking up for Passover. And the biggest threat to any Jew is the idea that we're not going to have tons of food to eat on a holiday. And Passover's coming. And this is the weekend where we clean our houses and just buy loads and loads of stuff. And Stop and Shop has the extra aisles, and there are 2 stores here in New Haven. And he told people in synagogue that it, not a sin, but he said it would not be kosher to cross the picket line.
Oh. Okay.
He said that would be in violation of how the quest for freedom that Passover is all about.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting.
I think it's interesting, and it's good to connect the things that we recognize from thousands of years ago to the things that are impacting us today. So yeah. I'm impressed.
31, Rabbi John J. Tilson, he is a longtime labor guy. And 31,000 Stop and Shop workers on strike in New England. Caught me by surprise because I seem to remember in the last few times the Congress ran out, there was a strike vote, but they never went on strike. They reached agreement. I'm trying to understand what the company's game plan is, because they were ready for strike, but the stores were closed. And now some of the pharmacies are open, but a lot of the stores, especially around here, still don't have replacement workers in. I'm wondering how they're planned. They must be losing a lot of money, with the strike.
Well, one of the things that people have been telling me, because they have been going to ShopRite, and they're talking about how crowded it is, and how many people are there, and how long it takes to get through and get out of there. And one of the things that has also been brought to my attention is that ShopRite's prices tend to be a little bit lower, and so I'm wondering what they're thinking about too, because when people get used to going to a certain place, some people are gonna come back because it's convenient, but they may lose some business permanently.
So Stop Shop says, hey, we're offering them raises. What's the big deal? As you pointed out, the union says, well, but they want to take cutbacks in health and pension benefits, which they say will be greater than the health increases. I always think as an employer every year, health insurance goes up so much every year, but that if you start charging your employees for that, then it overrides any pay increase, so they actually get a pay cut. So it seems like that's what's on the table. But also, what comes up a lot in the strike, even though it's not technically an issue? Everybody's focused on Marty the robot. I don't know if you met Marty.
I've seen Marby sort of scooting by.
Yeah, we all first
I
saw
think
Marty.
that's the robot.
We first ran into Marty the robot a few weeks ago. All of us when we were shopping, it freaked all of us out.
Mm-hmm.
And the workers keep bringing up Marty because they say we're worried there's the beginning of automation. Right now, he's not stocking shelves. He's looking for spills and watching things, probably spying on the people. I would assume. I mean, I think so. But but ultimately, there's probably going to be more automation, as there's automatic checkout. And while a lot of people my age, like me, don't go to the automatic checkout because we get flustered by the machines and we like the contact with a human being, that's kind of the future. It's changing.
It's like banking, right?
It is like banking. And so I think while there are very real issues, immediate issues, important issues about health givebacks, when I hear people talking about Marty, it's funny, but it's also, I think, about what the longer range issue is. I mean, can you turn back automation?
And I think that is something that they're absolutely worried about. And we know that you can't, unfortunately. But you always discover that there's something that a robot can't do.
Right.
And that we need a human being for. And so I'm sure that Stop and Shop will discover that.
And that we hope that artificial intelligent robots will free us to do other kinds of work that's meaningful.
Right.
And not have to work around the clock and get decent wages. And I was thinking, because Helen Powell, she used to be at Registrar of Voters in New Haven, assistant registrar. She was the head of the Fair Fixer Committee. Real community person for decades. She's retired, and I always go to her line. She's a cashier at Stop and Shop because I always go to her line.
I do too.
And the first thing she says is she remembers 8 years ago registering my daughter to vote, and she feels the ownership of that because she believed in her work so much. She remembers who she registered to vote and is so proud of that. And she felt the same way at Stop and Shop. You notice that everybody talks to her at the counter, and now on the picket line, she's a very compelling figure. She gets quoted more than everybody else in all the pictures. And we had one story by Tom Breen where she spoke to someone who was upset that he couldn't go buy a steak, and Helen had a great talk with him and explained to him what was at stake and kind of won him over. And that's sort of the human issue.
And it is. She lives in the neighborhood. It's that's why it's a real neighborhood issue, probably across the region, but especially here in New Haven. People work there. It's important work. It's got to be work that pays. And yes, we've got to be concerned about our health care and our pensions. In America, oftentimes, particularly for women, when they retire, they actually lose economic ground. And so that's a problem. So if you have a pension, it's worth fighting for to make sure that when you retire, that you don't automatically fall into poverty.
Yeah. And the reason I was also thinking about Marty was that not all automation is necessarily negative.
Right.
A lot of it's neutral. It's like the weather. It changes how we can adapt. And one story we had by Alan Appel last week was that the city is applying with Yale New Haven Hospital to experiment with driverless vehicles.
Right.
So you have this plan where Yale New Haven will have a shuttle that's driverless. And during the experiment, it'll be paid for by the company. And during the experiment, there'll be a human being on board to make sure it doesn't run over anybody. But I mean, that's kind of interesting.
No, I think it is.
The shuttle passengers, the parking lot, the different campuses. Yeah.
No, and it will follow the shuttle route. I think they may make some adjustments to that, and everyone will be able to ride it. That's the difference too, which is really good. And I don't think.
Oh, Yale New Haven should use that for the primary care center.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, that's one of the issues was about like getting people to the center.
Right, and so that's why we're partnering, because it won't just be for workers and students. It'll also be for New Haveners. And so we're excited about it. Ultimately, autonomous vehicles will change the way in which we use the city landscape.
Yeah. You don't have to have as much car ownership.
No, that's right. Not with Uber and Lyft and now autonomous vehicles.
And hopefully, the technology will be good enough there'll be a lot less human cost, like carnage. A lot fewer people getting run over, hopefully.
I hope so. So. But what we've got to do is to make sure that the people who have their cell phones and they like to walk and text, they need to watch what's happening in the street. Just don't walk out in the street with your cell phone in your face.
Done that once. I've actually texted you when I was walking once and then looked up and said, oh my God, I hope I didn't just run into something. You're right on the money on that one. That's right. I can't get run over. But I can remind you that you listen to Mayor Monday. WNHHFM live streamed at NewHavenIndependent.org. You had your campaign kickoff, a few
Yeah.
hundred people at. I thought it was interesting that you picked to do it at District because that is sort of centerpiece of economic development progress in the city for the last bunch of years.
I think it is, and it's something that actually started under my administration. I remember going over to right across the street at 1175, where Digital Surgeons was, and meeting with David Salinas, with Andy Wolf, and him giving us his vision. We went after the bus barn, were able to have it conveyed to us, and there was, there was a competition of sorts, and really pushed for him to get the building. And what a great
Less than a year, you got hundreds of people working, place filled up,
right.
high-tech incubator center, all the kind of, and you did take a risk. You decided a certain kind of development versus another kind of safer development, and now it's the place the state officials go when they say, here's the future of Connecticut's economy, here's something that's working.
That's right. And so we're really proud of it. And of course, there's good food right behind it.
If you're not a vegetarian.
If you're not a vegetarian. That's
Yes,
right. I
Markeisha-
forgot about
It's
that.
okay. Markeisha said it is awesome. And, she was there on opening day. So your theme was stay the course. So your message is going to be, I think, that a lot of great things are happening, from crime being lowered to stuff getting built. Your opponent's message is things need a change. We need a little more, change in the schools and things like that. So that seemed to be the two themes we were hearing over the weekend.
Well, yeah, I think we're making progress. And so we're really proud of it.
All right. And also, I want to ask you, it's tax day.
Yep.
And I like to bait people like Harry Droz, who's an easily baitable. He's the wonderful station manager we have, who's a fan of Donald Trump. Because I think we should feel great on tax day. I love to pay my taxes because I feel like that makes me part of something bigger. I feel like government is we, not them.
Mm-hmm.
And that when I pay taxes, it means that we can have schools. Theoretically, we can have good bus service. We can have safe place to live. I mean, we don't live in a chaotic world.
No, we
much
don't.
of the people, many places they do. And so I think that, we always grumble about taxes like we're giving the money to them. And there's nothing holy about taxes. I mean, we don't want to pay all our money to taxes. But I mean, good things happen for the most part, I think, when we pay taxes. So.
Well, I certainly, in the state of Connecticut, it makes a big difference. I mean, one of the discussions that we're having is educational cost sharing. From the governor's budget, it went down $275,000. Of course, there's Alliance money, but it's grant money.
Just to translate for people, you're talking about overall aid to education. That went down in the governor's budget. There's a special pot of money that has strings attached,
right,
where we were made somewhat whole, but not completely whole.
But not completely whole. And, every year it costs more money to run a district. So if you really want to live in the world that we live in today, that's going to require higher functioning people, more educated people, having skills around IT, coding, that sort of thing, then you're going to have a Class A educational system. You're going to have the resources to pay for it. And so, yes, in Connecticut, people should be happy to be paying taxes.
Yes, and even when I don't like the president, I'm happy to give it to the federal government because I believe in most of the things. I want there to be Social Security. I want there to be
absolutely.
Medicare, Medicaid, and all that. Brett Hoover writes in, the Board of Education story, which posted on the Register's website at midnight. I love when people keep track of things like that at midnight. Seemed troubling. Can you comment on what it means and how the differences between the board and the superintendent will be resolved? I should have paid more attention to the story I did. I've been talking to my own reporter about these issues. There are questions about how certain spending decisions were made, and the Board of Ed feels that Carol Burks, the superintendent, didn't make them right. I'm sorry I didn't read up on the specifics, but
Well, I think that there's a question as I think about that article about what we just talked about. Alliance money and how that's spent, and educational cost sharing money and how that's spent.
And was the issue that she signed off on contracts that they say she didn't have authority to, or am I getting that wrong?
No, I think that it wasn't in that article, but there has been some discussion about a $10,000 contract to help find
10,000.
$10,000, yeah, to help find a CFO. You know, we haven't had a CFO, a permanent one, since she's been
Chief Financial
superintendent.
Officer.
Yeah.
And then we got that email we all got last week from someone who was in line for the job and said that they were promised it and then they weren't for some reason.
Well, I think that what happened was they were about to negotiate a contract. It wasn't completed, and the superintendent wanted to look to see if she could find someone with more specific credentials that were specific to Connecticut. And so, you know, of course, he was upset because he was hoping to get that contract signed, and it wasn't. But the other issue is, and it is confusing, because I think a lot of people think that Alliance money is fluid, but in fact, it goes to districts that, you know, are struggling, challenged districts, and ours is challenged, and the state has an obligation to make sure that those dollars that are spent actually help to move the district forward.
Right, you can't just spend it on books and teachers.
No, you can't. Although you can do some of that, but you have to have a plan that is going to move the district forward, and you have to spend the money
I guess I'm
on that, and they have to agree that they think the plan will work. So that there's some give and take.
I guess I believe that a wealthy person put it to me really well recently. Said that the biggest issue in America is rich people have to pay more taxes. We should have taxes at somewhere near the rate we used to, and then just give it to schools to run the schools.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't get all this other stuff. But anyway, and I guess when you talk that there was an argument about whether she had authority for a $10,000 contract, that makes me wonder if the latest rumor I heard, it's just a rumor, I always tell you what rumors I hear, are true or not, which was that last Thursday in executive session when the board met, they were evaluating the superintendent, and that they authorized their lawyer to negotiate with her lawyer to have her leave the district, and they were compiling all these alleged reasons they have that they could get rid of her.
Well, I can't really talk about what happens in executive session.
Oh, yeah, you can. I give you permission. You got permission from on high. Look, let me dial up. The mayor may talk on Mayor Monday about all the stuff she's not allowed to talk about.
You know, I think that one of the things that the executive session was a continuation of the executive session that we had right after the board meeting, that we agreed to do an interim evaluation.
Okay. All right. I won't bug you anymore about saying what you're not supposed to say. How's that for a deal?
Deal.
Okay. Jimmy and Sarah Wong got good news last week.
Great.
Now they you know what it was? They own that coffee shop, the former Fuel coffee shop in Worcester Square. If you remember, I was on my high horse.
Oh, yeah, Fuel, yep.
I bugged the Mayor Monday for about 10 minutes about how these people had a historic building.
And I drove by there and I thought about you. I said, yes, I see. It does look like 1954.
Yeah. You know? And it's God forbid they wanted to have windows so you could see inside. And the historical poobahs said, well, this is a historic district, so we're not going to let you do it. He had to come back 3 times, spend tons and tons of money to redo it. And in the end, he invited someone from the Preservation Trust, which seems to play a very constructive role in town. She came and they had coffee and they explained what's going to make the preservationist poobahs be okay with it. And he explained, you know, how they wanted to actually have a business that worked because the last one went out of business and a window's a good idea. And they got approved.
Fantastic.
So so history marches on in New Haven.
All right.
And history was made a little, I guess, in Judith Terrace. Now, we don't hear about places like Judith Terrace up on a hill in Fairhaven Heights. And
beautiful site.
It is. And it wasn't so beautiful for a few years because there's a lot that got really trashed. It was one of those illegal dumping grounds and a good place for criminal activity and people passing through. And LCI, your neighborhoods agency, in addition to finding people, one thing they've done a lot under Serena Neil San Giorgio is they've been developing affordable housing. They've done it quietly. They don't issue press releases or call attention to themselves. But they built 5 really nice new homes. And one thing that really impressed the mean commenters on The Independent was that it didn't cost outrageous amounts of money for the homes. The total cost of building were $250,000. And they're nice homes, and you got affordable homes for people to live in, and 5 new homeowners in a place that was a problem.
No, I think it's
cut the
great.
ribbon last week, yeah.
It's really great, and I'll tell you what, those kitchens are beautiful, and the view that you have from the back of the houses. The house that I went in.
That's what people talked about. They can't wait to have their coffee on the veranda and look at the hill.
It's really, really very nice, and the fact that it's that, and I call it the Hill neighborhood. model of building houses that are owner occupied, but as well provide for people to have subsidized units.
So, meaning that the owners are subsidized, or they rent half the house?
They rent half the house.
So those are two families?
They're two families.
Oh, I didn't realize that. And that was the original infill model in the 80s, right? The
Right,
idea is that
yeah.
you get a home ownership for stability and you get rental so they can afford to own the house
Right.
through the rental income, and you have decent rental housing with an on-site landlord. Win-win.
It's a win-win, and that's what they did on Judith Terrace, and I think it was great. The other thing that was great, it was all New Haven contractors.
Ooh, that's right. You did mention that.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, local journalists, people
Yeah.
care about that. Eric Mastriano Sr. says, good morning, Mayor.
Good
And
morning.
to all, and good morning to Eric. Thanks for checking in. Pearl and Lincoln Streets, that they were upset about people who live there. Were upset about traffic. People, they always felt it was just a matter of time where someone gets hit because the people were going down Pearl and Lincoln fast and not paying attention on this little street where tons of people walk all the time in the back of the School of Management. And a person was hit there recently. She
Oh,
came
my.
with neighbors and asked for a stop sign. And the city said, traffic department said, they asked for 2 stop signs. And they said, we really can't justify it because you have to meet this threshold of how many accidents there are. There hadn't been other collisions, and that there are rules and this kind of thing. And the traffic authority overruled the traffic department on one of them, gave them a stop sign, so they were happy. And the most interesting comment I read, I don't know if it's true because our commenters know often about this more than I do, is they say the stop sign will make it worse. That because pedestrians see that stop sign, they think people are going to stop, but people run stop signs.
Well, hopefully people won't. I mean, the first thing you learn when you get your license is one, the shape of the stop sign, and that it does mean to stop.
And maybe when you're walking, you were saying earlier, maybe don't look at your phone so much.
That's right.
So you can see if someone's about to run you over on a 10-mile-an-hour street.
But one of the things I have noticed, and this is a real problem in town, and we've got to figure out how to deal with it. People run lights. I see it almost every day. They do run red lights. So
yeah, it is pretty bad there.
It's bad, and it's especially bad right around the hospital and right.
Oh yeah, where the woman got killed.
Yeah, and it's still bad there. So and their lights and everything else, but people, I don't know what makes them think that it's okay. We saw a bus, one of those what I would call, I don't know exactly what they're called, but when you have the
double buses, yeah,
the double buses, it ran a light, just ran a light the other day.
Wow,
it's like it happens too much in our town.
Wow. So another commenter, I know there's a lot of nasty comments, including the very few we let through after we zap all the others. But another productive solution to the Lincoln Pearl thing I thought was, this largely affects the SOM, School Management Community. It's right along the back of SOM. They say, why doesn't SOM put a sidewalk in? Because really the root of the problem is there's no sidewalk.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
It's narrow, but they say have SOM pay for sidewalk, and they said that the students there are working on it. Oh, we have a couple more questions coming in. I'm sorry, I don't say this right. Anais Nunez, and I apologize if I said this wrong. I have a question for the mayor. How can we reduce the level of stress among charter schools across the city? I have a serious concern in regard to my children's school, and I need help to address it. Thank you for that question.
Well, I think that one of the things that you should do is each charter school has a board. And so what I would do is to go to the chairman of the board and ask if you could come and speak at that board and talk about your concern about the level of stress that you've seen and how it's impacted your children.
And people did do that recently, but in general, people don't realize charter schools are technically public schools and they have boards.
They have boards.
And people don't go the way they go to the other board of education,
No, they don't, but you really should.
It's not like they really let you know easily when these meetings are, but you can find out. And you can ask at your school, and they have to tell you, Ms. Nunez. So go stand up for your rights, as the mayor says. Aaron Good says, does Mayor Hart, this is interesting, does Mayor Hart support measles vaccinations that are mandatory, non-compliant parents can be fined, or compulsory? Government can compel parents to comply. Okay, we got to step back and think of those two different words. Mandatory, you got to do it or you get fined. Compulsory, government can compel parents to comply. This is like a true vote. You got to get all the options.
So, yeah.
To prevent this disease from spreading any further in New Haven. Now, let's back up for a second. The first case of measles was reported on Friday in the city, as you know. And there were some discussions going on Friday because there was concern about how that one religious community was dealing with it because the person had gone to a bar mitzvah in Brooklyn where the measles is spreading in ultra religious communities, brought it back, and but in New Haven, luckily, the community was brought back to is very on top of the measles thing. They have they had already sent out a statement to all their congregants: don't come to shul this Saturday if you haven't been vaccinated for measles. There was none of this crazy. I'm sorry. There was none of this anti-vaccination stuff going on. But there
Hmm.
was still a concern. Government swung into action to try to. They dealt with this community on Friday right before sundown because there was this feeling of pressure about getting to them before sundown to make sure the word got out. They were satisfied that the community was doing a good job. Former alderman was involved. So what's your take on that and what Aaron Good is asking? Aaron, thank you for the question.
Sure. I've, I feel strongly about vaccinations. I'm one of the kids back in the dark ages before there was a polio vaccine that contracted polio. Spent at least a half a year trying to um, rid my body of it,
Yeah, you
learn to
talk from
walk
personal
again.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and as someone who's lived with that disease, I would never want anyone to have to live through that or any family to have to live through that. But having said that, I think it should be mandatory, and that if people don't do it, that there is something to raise their level of concern that is fair. Um, but I don't think it should be compulsory.
And what I'm trying to get the difference here. I'm sorry, it takes me a minute.
Well,
Some of these questions.
I'm
So
thinking
the
that
difference here is that you say you would fine them, but you would not in some way compel them. You wouldn't have some kind of door with a needle and stick it in their arm.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. The what about this case? What do you know about this case? And are you concerned about its spread or are things being taken care of?
Well, I think that that with measles, you just worry that it will impact on your child's life. It can do severe damage, uh, brain damage, I believe, over time. Often it doesn't, so that you can actually get the. I got the measles too, although there may be some that just a joke.
I knew
But
where you were going with that.
but I think that these are things that our young people don't have to have. But I like what the community did, as you describe it. There are other ways to protect the community, and
Was the state in touch with you on Friday when this was happening?
no, they weren't. But like the other thing is that because we have such high uh, immunization rates here in New Haven, that we really have pretty good herd immunity, which means that likely not to spread through us as much because so many people are protected.
All right. And Aaron Good has a second one. We got two for with Aaron today.
Okay.
What are the specific criteria? Oh, you're going to like this one. What are the specific criteria or qualifications that Mayor Harp will be looking for in her appointments to the Police Civilian Review Board? As we talked about last week, there's less than a month left where community management teams are supposed to give you their nominations. We did find two people in Westville who want to serve because the problem has been, as you said before this thing was even passed, your concern was finding people who are going to participate and show up and have a quorum. So what are you looking for?
Well, I think the most important thing is that they are active in their communities and think that this is an important activity in which to engage, which is that they will represent their community and they will go to the meetings and help make decisions.
And how do you find that out?
Well, one of the things that I'm hoping to do is to the degree that I can, is interview finalists. I'm having some people take a look.
That's right. You have Esther Armand on the
Right.
case. She's been going to the community management team meetings talking about this.
And she'll do the initial interview, and then for those that sort of rise to the top, I'll interview them, and I'll make sure that it's something they want to do. What's the point of appointing someone to something that they don't think is important?
Okay, and Anais Nunez, and I apologize if I'm saying your first name wrong. You know if I'm saying that wrong?
Sounds right to me.
Okay. I always hate the disrespect because my radio isn't as good as print. You can just spell the name right. She writes in what her story was about. She said, my child was sick, was in the ER last week. And on Monday, she could not attend school. On Tuesday, she got yelled at by her music teachers, embarrassed her in front of all the scholars of her class to the point where she cried and had a panic attack. this particular teacher. I called him 3 weeks ago to request a change in music instrument. As my daughter's braces got removed, I asked him to please have my daughter play anything that's not a wind instrument. Teacher refused to keep her without an instrument. She asked to go to double band, and he refused. About a month ago, he had my 9-year-old child save his personal number in her cell phone. They've been texting back and forward. She erased the message. I'm scared. The
Uh,
board has not done a thing to address it.
well, I think that got to go to the board. You've got to remember that these schools are chartered by the State Board of Education. If you don't get satisfaction from the board, or at least first the principal, then the board, then I would go to the State Board of Education with my complaints.
Okay. So nice. You got a local board there at your school. And the mayor is urging you, if that is not resolved to your satisfaction, go to the State Board of Education because they oversee what happens at charter schools. And the charter schools listen to the state because the state
Absolutely.
has the purse strings. And we're listening to Mayor Monday on WNHH-FM 103.5 live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. I was really interested in something I saw you were quoted in the Register this weekend. Good story by Mary O'Leary. We've all been following Mayor Trump's, antics on immigration.
Yeah.
And his latest move, which I found very interesting, actually, philosophically, but as you pointed out, kind of makes no sense on the ground, which is that he said, okay, we're going to let all these immigrants in who are at the border, undocumented, but we're going to send them to sanctuary cities who say we don't want to cooperate with the country. Now, what we've heard on the ground is that people say that's not a thing you can actually do legally. There's no process. You have to go here. But, philosophically, because, he deals in a very PR kind of way. And then he says, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, and nice. I thought it's one of those times when Trump speaks in very simplistic ways that I think make a little bit of sense. Even though on the ground, it's not really a program you could do. It's more of a PR thing. But why not? If he's kind of calling cities like ours on our own rhetoric. We've always said, and I think we deeply believe, that our community is stronger with people who are risking their lives to come here and want to be here. They're the people who turned around Fairhaven. They're the people who work hard. They're the people who take less and give more in our community. He's saying, okay, you want them, have them.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying because I think he's thinking that people will say, "Well, oh no."
Right. We don't want all these people. They're all what you say they are.
Yeah. But I don't think that's how we see it in New Haven, and I think that it's wrong for him to come up with these sort of like, I don't know what I would call them, some sort of brain attacks that are ill thought out and say them. But honestly, we have said that in New Haven that people want to come here, be our neighbors, work to rebuild communities like the folks in Fairhaven have done, folks in the Hill have done. Come on down. We want you.
All right.
And what we do know is that in America, we don't have an adequate number of workers. We just don't. And so his whole plan for immigration is ill-conceived. And, he just needs to stop it and really come up with a plan that is good for our country and good for the people who've risked their lives in these other countries for freedom. He's got to do that.
And it's really a shame that you can't do what he was suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, and I'm sure we would be accepting, and there are any number of other cities in Connecticut that would be, and across this country. So.
Yeah. It's the way I think about healthcare. I was wondering, one state can't really do single-payer healthcare. Vermont tried it; it just cost too much. But if the whole country did it, there are those of us. It's almost like more a religious belief than a political belief that if we had that big group of people, we would get much lower costs and it'd be better for everybody. But you need that huge group of people.
Right.
So I was wondered if the blue states could have a compact. You had half the country.
Mm-hmm.
Have 160 million people who might be healthier than the red states.
Right.
And have them all jointly negotiate with the insurance companies and the doctors and try a single payer compact.
I think that's a possibility. And it's something that most the folks in the blue states would probably want to do.
Okay, then I charge you because you already convinced the African American Mayors Association to take that immigration stand. So now you got the Blue State Governors Association. Okay, you're on the case.
All right.
Just kidding. It's optional. You're at the Elm Ivy Awards. Isn't this something Yale does every year to say who are the heroes on the campus and in the community and bridging town gown relations? How was that?
Oh, it's always really very nice. And this year in particular was the one year I think that they tried to give Bruce Alexander awards in the past, and he refused them. He was still working for Yale, and this year he wasn't in a position to say no. So he got an award. He's done a lot for New Haven, but they also gave awards to Ms. Friedlander, who does great work at the British Art Museum in connecting young people to British art. And there was a gentleman who works with Titus Kaffar, who is doing the business work with Next Haven with artists as small business people. And a number of folks from the executive director of Arte got an award, and in terms of the way in which they work with Yale and New Haven, and of course New Haven Promises director Patricia Melton.
She's the ultimate.
She
went to Yale. She came back to New Haven. Yep. She's done a fantastic job with New Haven Promise.
It's a phenomenal program.
It's a dynamo, yeah.
She really is, and and you know what? She was the one who helped us start the program, the alternative program at Gateway to Education. So she brought that to our attention, and so she's working at all levels, at all times, and is doing a phenomenal job. And did you know that she almost went to the Olympics? So she's
yes, as a track runner. Yeah, that's how when she came to Yale.
Yeah, she's amazing.
All right, we got a question in from Florencio Cotto. He's the head of the police union. He said you were quoted at the Stop and Shop article saying you were there to help. The neighborhood is divested of the place. You want to help the workers. That you testified in the arbitration proceedings with the police union over a new contract, and say, do the men and women of the police department deserve your help? If so, they've been without a contract. Does this mean that he's asking you to support the men and women of the police department as you support the strikers?
Well, I do support the men and women of the police. I think they're the best police force in Connecticut, if not the United States. And you know, our only problem is ability to pay.
Right. How is that going? So you testified in arbitration proceedings?
Right. And so we're in the middle of arbitration, and I believe that the police union is making its case right now, and then I guess the city will make its case afterwards. But you know, I want this arbitration and this contract to be settled as soon as possible. And so I am hopeful that it will be done. You know, look, 56% of our property is tax exempt. The state gives us.
Wait, every week you come on to the percent. I think you're going to have to stop coming on the air because it's going to be like 106% by June.
Listen, when I first came, it was just 48% as mayor. It's gone up to 56%. And so if the state gave us other ways to raise revenue, and we're one of the few states that only gives our municipalities property tax as the way to raise revenue. The fact that we're so geographically small, I'm not going to tell you how small we are this time.
18.7 square miles. We're like a pipsqueak next to Hamden on that score.
Yeah, we are. But you know what? I found out that Bridgeport's even smaller than we are.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're about 16.7 square miles. Right. And so all of our major cities that have the biggest populations have to provide the most services, have the least wherewithal to do it under the system that we have.
Do you have the bill back up again this year where we could add a 1% sales tax or an extra tax on restaurant meals and entertainment tickets?
I believe there is a bill like that up there this year. There's also, when people are looking at recreational marijuana, there is some portion of what is raised from that is purported to go to cities. We'll see if one, it gets passed, and if actually the cities get a cut.
Yeah. Okay. Last week was a hearing on the city budget. Because it doesn't raise taxes, there are no pitchforks and no big demonstrations about it. But there were some interesting points brought up. Your corporation counsel wants to have an in-house Board of Ed lawyer to have a staff person rather than contract everything out, which I didn't realize we no longer had. Remember in the 80s, that was the big issue. Luby Harper had the contract, and then when
Mm-hmm.
he didn't need it anymore, they went in house and saved $200,000 with Ray Van. And I guess I hadn't checked in the last 30 years. So now we're back to mostly contracting out. Why would that be a corporation counsel position rather than a Board of Ed position? Like, wouldn't it be paid by the Board of Ed?
It would likely be paid by the Board of Ed, although as it stands now, a portion of the work that the Board of Ed does, particularly on personnel matters, the Corporation Council already does, but it's spread out among the corp councils. And so the thought is that we would have one corp council that would do the majority of that work, would specialize in education law, and would take some of the pressure off of the contracting that is done. Now, of course, they would still have contracted lawyers, but we would be able to take on more of the sort of everyday legal work, and then the specialty work would be done by those who contract out. And we would probably be looking to, and we have an obligation as a city to support the Board of Education to some degree, but we would feel like that was within the purview of our responsibility since we're already doing some of it.
Gotcha. Some updates. You were completely right. We checked with the owners of 201 Munson Street, which is going to be hundreds of new apartments in an edge of Science Park on Munson Street in New Hallville. It had been, after all the dirt was dug up, it was stopped because there was a fight among the owners, but new owners are on board. Old owners are gone. The main partner's still there, and he told us ready to go. They're about ready to start finish cleaning up and put a site plan in.
Well, we're excited about that, because if you drive by there, all you see are mounds of dirt. So it'll be good to see the housing that they plan to do there. And I'm glad that he was able to get other partners so that they could move forward. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge
really
site.
That
yeah.
neighborhood, yeah. I mean, good things are happening in Dixville, right along that corridor. And you mentioned Titus Kaphar, a block down is Next Haven, which you mentioned, which is the new residential place for artists. Very competitive. Hundreds around the world competed to live and work in this place. So it's half built. They didn't have a ceremony about it because they're building the other half for educational programs for kids and a gallery. It was featured, big article in the New York Times yesterday, Patricia Lee Brown.
Oh, okay.
You knew it was coming. I remember that. They held it for a week. But
right.
I read it last night. It was a 2-page spread, huge photos, beautiful story about Titus's life story. I became a MacArthur Fellow. His work is in the great museums. He works on all these fantastic projects, and he decided to live in New Haven, be part of New Haven, and work on the revival of Dixwell. That guy's just too much. He's great.
He's too much, and his vision about what it takes to be an artist is just not doing your art. I think is really, it's new, and it will make a difference for so many artists who learn the business of art.
Right. That was a big part, they said.
Yeah.
And also, one of his projects was Reginald Betts, who had been arrested as a teenager, ended up going to Yale Law, and had, fought to be admitted to the bar, and they did a project that was a joint art project together. That was very interesting. The Vlock House. So that's where the School of Architecture at Yale builds a house every year in a low-income neighborhood, and that this year the city said we'll sell Columbus House the land so they can build it there, but we want to put some requirements on the design. It was late in the process. Any update?
I don't have an update on that, but I'll check with Serena. I know that she said, "Trust me, I'll take care of this."
Well, when she says that, that usually does happen. We haven't found a case where it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Police chief, anything new? Process started?
The process hasn't started yet. Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll be posting the position.
All right. Nicole Jefferson, have you guys decided yet? Because I think this week you have a deadline to decide whether to appeal the latest ruling on whether to rehire her.
We're still thinking about it.
Okay, Live, Work, Learn, Play. Anything new on whether they decided you got someone new to take over that project at the old Coliseum site? They were looking at whether it would still have a hotel. Anything new on that?
Nothing new on the hotel, although we are in the process of discussing with them to give us a model of what it will actually look like, what their vision is.
So much going on. Any plans for Easter?
On the Saturday before Easter, my daughter's getting married.
Hey,
so
Mazel Tov. Whoa.
Yes. So what about you and Passover? Any plans?
Yeah, every year I go to my daughter and daughter-in-law. They do and our grandson. They do a great Seder up in Northampton. Very kind of social justice Seder and vegetarian and really fun. We stay up past midnight singing.
Kombucha.
Yeah, we have kombucha. We don't actually. Can we have that on
Can you
Passover?
have that on Passover?
I'm not sure if there's any. I think it's okay because that's just fermented tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we eat the special foods.
Uh-huh.
So today I was at my barber who loves Easter. It's a big family thing every year, and they have a big Palm Sunday thing at his grandmother's. But he's a Catholic, but all the Jews go to his hair cutting so that he knows the rituals of Passover.
Okay.
And he knows that we all go. I got mine this morning. We all go for our big pre-Passover haircut because depending on your interpretation of law, you either have to go 33 days without a haircut or 49
Oh my
after
goodness.
Passover. So everyone rushes, gets in. So that same network that put out the word about the measles put out the word about his hair cutting, and he stayed open extra hours on Sunday, and all these Orthodox Jews were lined up for their haircut from Bernard, and he raced out, got them all in, and made it to Palm Sunday dinner
Oh, how
at
nice.
his mother's. To me, that was New Haven.
Yeah, that's New Haven.
Well, I hope you have a great wedding. That's big news.
That is big news.
Where is it taking place?
It's going to be at Amelia Island in Florida.
Whoa!
Yeah.
And did he win mother-in-law approval?
Yes. She's happy.
Because you're not
Mom's
a
happy.
pushover. Okay. I know you got standards.
Yeah. He's a
All
good
right.
guy.
Well, that's wonderful. I hope it's a wonderful, wonderful event
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
and a safe trip.
Thank you.
And we've had a safe trip here on Mayor Monday. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We're going to take it out. Thanks to Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. Thanks, everybody, for your questions. That's what makes this show, in my opinion. Harry Droz, Heavy D, this guy who makes everything work at in the WNHH FM as our station manager at the controls, getting us on all the social media platforms. Thanks for his job. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.